Okay, I saw this mystery black box on eBay, and I had to have this one. Just curious to play with this one. I got a lot of amps and had a lot of amps and seen a lot of stuff, and what would I guess I'll open it up in a minute, but and show you what I found interesting on this mystery box. It kind of looks homemade, maybe not, maybe a Ray Wilkins, I don't know for sure. Just kind of guessing and throwing it out there, but it's very well made box. The ugly thing though, no meter and screwdriver tune and load. Not that pretty of a box. Well, not pretty at all. To me, ugly rack handles on the side. Just, then basic on the back. You just got your radio in, antenna out, power cord and a fuse. Just a basic medium size old ugly box, right? So, and I paid some good money for this. This was no bargain, but I wanted it. And sometimes when you see something you want, and this is not something that's gonna come around all the time, this box. And again, we'll show you that in a second when we open this box and show you why I wanted it. It's probably not going to be everybody's cup of tea anyway, because it's not really a sweep tube box, really, but it kind of is, kind of isn't. So I guess that's enough for the talking. But if anybody knows what this box is, especially before I open it up, let me know. You get an attaboy, right? Okay. So we're going to open up this mystery box here carefully. There we go. And there she go on the inside. When they had this mystery box on eBay, I could see the 9 tubes in it. And I figured that one over there, because back in the day when this box was made was probably the late 60s or early 70s. Transistors were coming into play, but for these tube boxes, most of the time they use a tube keying circuit, and hence that's the tube for the tube keying circuit in this box. That's a 6AQ5 tube. But what I found interesting was 8 little finals, look like 6BQ5s, but they're not. They're 6GK6s, which is basically a 6BQ5 with a different pinout, right? And those are more like audio tubes than they are sweep tubes. Back in the days of TV sets, audio tubes, provided the audio to a TV and, stereo and stuff like that, because they were designed for audio. And sweep tubes were designed for TVs back in the day, and they controlled the sweep, the dot that went across the screen on an old TV back then. That was the sweep, the dot that was sweeping across, right? And then down to the next line and sweep across. There was a tube that controlled that, and that was called the sweep tube. And that's where the term sweep tubes come from, because back in the tube TV days, those sweep tubes were plentiful and they were cheap. So, when it was time to make an amplifier, back then, there weren't that many good RF power tubes. There were some, but they were expensive. Where sweep tubes, since they were in millions of TVs, you can go down to the TV store, record store, the discount drugstore sometime, and they would have sweep tubes and regular tubes, and they had a tube tester right there, a lot of them. And sweep tubes were cheap and they were plentiful. So CB amps, they're like, we can use these sweep tubes and put them in CB linear amplifiers, and hence the term sweep tubes, because that's what they originally what their purpose was. But anyway, this has the 8 final tube 6GK6s, which is the different pinout of a 6BQ5. And these are all Sylvanians. Actually, the keying tube is a Sylvania too. Your plate transformer, and I think that transformer there goes to the bias, and that's the front of it. But I saw these, I'm like, 8 You know, I didn't know if they're 6BQ5s, but they, you know, were in the family. So I'm like, 8 of them? I got to see what makes that guy tick. You know, I didn't see anything other than that. But I saw 8 of those small tubes. I'm like, that's unique. Transductor, gotta have it. So I bid up on that one and I got it. And it's in pretty good shape, you know, especially, let's say this thing was made in 1970. This is 2024. What's that? 54 years? You know, 54 years old. So looks pretty good for an old guy, right? I'm gonna sit the camera down and see if I can carefully turn this thing over. And we see some inside, some amp porn. This little guy with this dress pulled up, hopefully. All right, stay. We got a little bit of lean going on, but okay. And then the insides, that's the output. You see all those parasitic resistors. Plate choke, that orange one there. DNAs use that type of plate choke. Tune and load, those uses small capacitors. That one's an air variable, and that's that little screwdriver one there. Well, they're both screwdriver on the front. Tune and load, that's your variable capacitors. And over here's the high voltage. I do like the build quality and the design of this a lot, except for one thing I don't like. And this is the high voltage power supply here, and it's a full wave center tap. So one side of the transformer, the red wire, goes to the diodes here. The other side, the transformer, the red wire, goes to the diodes there. And then those are your filter capacitors. We replaced those guys, just 2 in series. But with that, and here's the center tap, that red and yellow, the common color for a center tap. That goes to ground, actually. That post is grounded. Hard to see from the angle, but I'll give you a hint. There's something in the high voltage I don't like a lot. Another attaboy, if you can figure that one out. It's not that hard to figure. Something that I don't like about that one right there. But anyway, we do like the kind of circular design of the output. Kind of like that. This one is turbocharged, which I figured, you know, using the 6BQ5 or the 6GK6 tubes. And it's got voltage going to the screen, which I call the turbocharger. And then down here is your negative bias. And that cap there goes to the negative bias. And that's your keying circuit tube, or your keying tube. Your, you know, common relay. No preamp in this, so basically, you know, in and out, turbocharge, 8 tubes with a keying circuit. And your indicator light, is that the mod light? No, that's the on light, and that's the power mod light. And that's all to this amp. You know, not a whole lot of fancy and unneeded stuff, you know, like preamps that don't usually work very well in an amplifier anyway. So basic build, but I do like the build quality. Again, is this homebrew or Ray Feltz, or, you know, who built this guy? It's not push-pull. I was kind of hoping it might have been, because push-pulls are known to be cleaner than non-push-pull amplifiers in parallel. But everything's parallel, no push-pull. But anyway, I still like it a lot. So I guess that's enough of the amp horn. So we're gonna turn her around and put her top back on and maybe fire this up, or maybe I just leave the top off. I don't know. So anyway, bad camera work, setting the camera down again, but I'm gonna use 2 hands to handle this guy. And if you ain't figured out why I'm really careful with this guy, but I was saying the one thing I don't like about it is that there are no bleeder resistors on the high voltage. Those caps will hold a charge for forever. And actually, when I was playing with it, I was trying to bleed them down with a meter and some other stuff, and it was going down slow. But if I didn't put something on those caps, they were just standing still, holding that charge, because there's nothing to suck them down. And also, this amp, the high voltage goes through the keying relay. So like I've talked about with Palomar's, it only applies to high voltage to the tubes when it's keyed down. That might be one reason why they don't put bleeders on it, because if you put bleeders on that circuit, it would drain the caps every time you unkey. Then you key up and you got to charge the caps up again, and caps, high voltage caps like that, when they're discharged and then you hit them with that high voltage, they pull a lot of current, a lot of amps, and over time that will probably not be good for the caps or the transformer or the diodes either. So that could be why there are no bleeders in this amp, you know, by design, because the caps stay charged even when you're unkeyed. So when you key up and the high voltage goes to the tubes, the caps are still charged, so it's not pulling amps all the time. However, you know, it's 6 of 1, 12 of 2. It's not a win-win. You know, not having bleeders is not the safest thing. But again, having bleeders in this amp would put a strain on the components. So anyway, we're gonna turn her on. Got the pilot light going. Let it warm up for a few, and then we're just gonna fire her up. We got the mud duct radio, and the radio only does about 3.5, 4 watts, but we got it going through so much stuff before it gets to the amp. The radio's going through that watt meter. We got a preamp in line. We got a pre-selector in line. We're trying to get down some of the noise floor, because I'm starting to play with my own stuff instead of you know, doing other stuff right now. So we're trying to get my noise down on my receive. So we got like I say, a pre-selector in line and a CPI preamp. I've got a lot of preamps, tried most of the popular ones, and to me CPI is the best, better than even the better ham stuff, at least for the CB band. But anyway, radio's going through those 3. It's also going through those 2 little driver amps there when I, you know, want to play with something bigger that needs some drive. And then it goes through this watt meter, so I can see the input watts going into this amp, and then out this amp is just going to that watt meter, and then into my big dummy load. It's way up top somewhere. So anyway, she ought to be warmed up, and hopefully we haven't knocked anything out of place, and she's still doing what she's supposed to do, hopefully. So key her down, got the mod light audio, and the mod light lights brighter with audio, and that's all you get for metering or indications. And then over here is the watts that are reaching the amp. Not a whole lot. 1.5, right? This is 20 watt scale, and this watt meter is right before, you know, the amp. Again, all that stuff in line is sucking down my watts. Actually, this watt meter is right after the radio, and it's showing 2.8, almost 3. But again, all that stuff is sucking down my watts. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow, no wonder. But anyway, enough of that. 200 watt scale. The guy's keying about 65. Audio. Talking about 125, 130. That's on average. Whistling to about 170. And then last, we're gonna put it on peak. Put it in the corner. It's probably doing about 250. Ain't, you know, like killing it, but I'm happy with this little driver. Audio. About 275, 280. Audio. Okay, that's watts out, peak. That's watts in on average. I guess I can put that on peak. Watts in. Audio. There you go. 5.5, 6 watts into this thing. Audio on peak about 280, 285. I don't know. Audio. Just under 3 out. So we like this amp a lot. And, 8 of those 6GK6, 6BQ5 equivalents, not hitting them hard, even though it's turbo. I got good swing with this thing. And by the way, that's about a 300 watt transformer. Not that big. And also, speaking of that, I've had a couple people ask me about Palomar 300As. And they're like, hey, what do you get out of them? I'm like, 5, maybe 6, if you get good tubes. I had some people say, oh, man, I've seen, people get 1,000 out of them at least, I've seen them do it. They did some tricks and they got 1,000 out of them. Man, a Palomar 300A got 4 sweep tube finals. And for me, a sweep tube, if you get 100 out of each sweep tube, you're doing good. If you get 125, you're doing very good. If you're doing 150, you're doing great. Even 150, I think, is too much out of each tube. So a 4-tube Palomar 300A with 4 finals, if you get 100 a tube, you're getting 400 watts out, right? 125, you're getting 500 out. 150, you're getting 600 watt, which is, again, pushing those sweep tubes, right? People talk about they get 1,000, out of a Palomar 300A. No. If you do, and I've seen people push sweep tubes that hard. I've seen them get a ton of watts out of a Maverick 250 and a Phantom 500 because they got 4 driver tubes already, and they drive the driver tubes and they kill the finals. They kill the driver tubes too when they drive them like that. So I say you could do it. You can get that kind of watts out for a minute, and then something's going to die. A sweep tube cannot handle that kind of power. 1,000 watts out of a 300A, that's 250 watts per sweep tube. And those are not, the big bad 8908s or M2057 tubes. You might could get that out of them, and that's pushing it. But, a little 6LF6 8950, you want to get 250 watts out per tube. Good luck. I mean, there are ways you can achieve that. Dentron amps, they juiced up the filament voltage, and the filament voltage cooks off, the electrons from the cathode. And when they juice up the filament voltage, which they, do in a lot of the dentrons, it's like put more coal in the fire, so you got a bigger fire, so you will get more watts out of them tubes. But dentrons were known for eating tubes, the 8875s and the MLA 2500 and the 8877 and the Dentron DTR 2000L. Them things would eat tubes. Another example I was looking at the other day is the Black Cat JB2000 with the driver tube in it. They used a single 6L6 family 6CA7 to drive 23500Zs in the Black Cat JB2000. And I was looking at the schematics the other day. They run a 6.3 volt filament for the 6 CA7. They run a 7.5 volts to the filament, so they cooking that tube. You throwing all the coal in that fire, right? Cooking the tube. Plus they run about 1100 volts on the plate of that driver tube of a 6L6 basically, and they kill that tube. And back in the day, people with a JB2000, man, you were eating driver tubes every day if you fat mouthing on that thing. So there are ways to get watts out, but it ain't gonna last long. And besides, a Palomar 300A, the transformer, I looked it up at one time, but I forgot. I'm getting old, CRS. But the transformer is about a 400 watt transformer, right? That separate path transformer, 300A, about 400 watts, give or take. Sure, get 1,000 watts out of a 400 watt transformer and see how long that lasts. Sure, it can be done. ain't gonna last long. So these people that, you know, show you that they doing it and all that, yeah, maybe, but you know, it's a whole lot of tricks that you could do. Like I say, juice up the filament, turbocharge it, you know, put more voltage on the plate, high SWRs. That's another way. Higher the SWR, the more watts it's gonna show on a watt meter. But again, drive it real hard, you know. Well, those are all ways to get more out of it, but there's nothing you can do for long term to get more than that out of an amp. Man, I should have brought my manual, had it ready for my 300A. Maybe it's close by here. Hold on a second. I had a 300A manual somewhere, and because I was playing with one more customers, and I saw that page where it basically said the output of the 300A. Hot dog, I don't see it. So anyway, we're not going to dwell on it, but the manual itself for the Palomar 300As basically said about 500 watts is all you're going to get out the amp. And that's from the people who made the amp. And also Palomar, they made the 350Z, and they tried to squeeze more watts out of the same tubes, right? They turbocharged it, put some bias on there, and you know, did some stuff with it, and they got about 50, 75 more watts. And of course, the Palomar 300A is considered one of the best amplifiers ever built, CB amps, and the Palomar 350Z is one of the worst CB amplifiers ever built. You know, that's what happens when you try to squeeze more watts out of something than it's made for. Anyway, got a little long with it. Went on a little bit of a rant, but that's going to be it for this one. My little, do you call it an 8 tube if you don't count the driver tube, or you call it a 9 tube? I don't know. Let's go 8 tube. My little 8 tube 6GK6 turbocharged amplifier. I like this one. Okay, that's it for this one. Bye.